Dear teachers, today we are looking at how reading activities can be used to build critical thinking skills in our students. When we start with a text, the first step is to ask simple or recall questions. These are direct, fact-based questions like, who are the main characters? Or, where does the story take place? This stage checks basic comprehension. Once students are comfortable, we move to simple understanding questions. These require them to explain meaning or reasons. For example, why did this event happen? Or, what problem did the character face? Here, students begin to reason and show they understand beyond just remembering. The final step is to encourage critical thinking, higher order questions. These push students to analyze, evaluate, and connect ideas with their own lives. For instance, what lesson can we learn from this situation? Or, how would you have acted differently? This gradual movement, from basic comprehension, to reasoning, and then to critical thinking and personal connection, helps us guide learners step by step. So as teachers, remember to balance your questions. Start simple, but always lead your students toward deeper understanding and independent thinking. This process not only improves reading skills but also nurtures thoughtful, reflective learners. Show them how punctuation changes clarity and tone. For example, the sentence, let's eat, children, has a very different meaning from, let's eat children. Stress this difference so they realize why commas matter. Next, highlight punctuation conventions step by step. Begin with capitalization. Show how names and the start of sentences must begin with a capital letter. Move on to commas, especially when writing a series of items, or in short dialogues, such as, yes, thank you. Then introduce question marks, quotation marks, dashes, colons, and even hyphenation gradually, always through real examples from the text. Connect this with other reading activities. When students point out objects in a picture, ask them to write a sentence and place the punctuation correctly. When they guess what follows in the story, let them frame it as a question with a question mark. By weaving punctuation into prediction, description, and oral interactions, we help students see it as a natural part of communication. And this is how they will learn to use punctuation with accuracy, clarity, and confidence. First, begin by discussing language and figurative language. Stress how authors use words creatively. Help students notice similes, metaphors, or simple describing words. Second, guide them towards main idea development. Encourage students to point out or name common objects in pictures and describe them in a word or a sentence. Then, use pre-reading strategies. Let children predict the story by just looking at the illustrations. Third, introduce organizational patterns in texts with mini examples. Give students a clear example and breakdown to show how authors use language and figurative devices. Organize paragraphs around a main idea, and apply different text structures. Pause. While reading, ask them to locate factual information and answer in 1 or 2 words. Challenge them to guess what follows in the story. Encourage practice with describing words, like soft hard, big small, black white. Finally, connect to writing and speaking tasks. Have them write a few sentences to describe a picture, use action words, and practice introductions and family talk. Don't forget to highlight punctuation marks such as capitalization, commas, and question marks. By following this sequence, you move students from basic comprehension right pointing arrow to reasoning right pointing arrow to critical thinking and personal connection. The first takeaway is to use short passages. Always ask questions before, during, and after reading. This will activate prior knowledge, guide attention, and check comprehension at each stage. Next, guide students to spot facts versus opinions. Stress the difference between explicit meanings, those that are clear and direct, versus implied meanings, which are hidden and require reasoning. Link this to classroom activities. When students point out or name objects in a picture, ask them whether they are giving a fact or sharing an opinion. When they guess what follows in a story, encourage them to notice if the meaning is stated or implied. Also, highlight figurative language in the story, such as describing words like soft hard, big small, black white, and compare it with narrative elements. This strengthens their descriptive writing and speaking. Finally, always connect new ideas to students' prior knowledge. For example, ask them, have you ever felt comforted by the moon? Or, have you ever helped a friend in trouble? This makes reading personal and meaningful. By doing so, we build skills step by step. From identifying objects, predicting, and locating facts, to reasoning, describing, and linking experiences. And this is how we truly develop reading for meaning. First, remember this teacher takeaway. Use short, relatable passages. For example, instead of a long article, you can use a small story about a student's school day. Pause. This makes the vocabulary meaningful and easy to connect with. Second, show students how one word or phrase can carry layers of meaning. Stress, layers of meaning. For instance, the word light can mean not heavy, it can also mean brightness, and in a figurative sense, light of knowledge. Third, teach parts of speech through real examples, not in isolation. Stress, not in isolation. So instead of giving a list, like noun, verb, adjective, take a sentence, Ali runs fast. Here, Ali is the noun, runs is the verb, and fast is the adverb. Fourth, encourage students to use reference tools such as a dictionary or thesaurus. But also train them to practice in text inference. Stress, in text inference. For example, if a passage says, the boy was famished after the long journey, students may guess that famished means very hungry, even without opening a dictionary. In summary, keep vocabulary lessons short, connected to real life, layered in meaning, and active through examples and inferences. Let's begin with the past continuous tense. It shows an action happening in the past. For example, he was walking to school when it started to rain. Pause. Notice, the action was ongoing in the past. Next is the simple past tense. This is for completed past actions. For instance, she saw the bird, she stopped to look at it. Both actions are finished. Stress, completed actions. Now the present continuous tense. This tense describes an action happening right now. Example, the students are keeping their books on the table. The action is ongoing in the present. Then comes the simple future tense. It shows an action planned for the future. For example, we will take the exam next Monday. Pause. This points to something that has not yet happened. Here's a teacher tip. Ask your students, how does each tense show the time of action? Stress slowly. This question helps them compare and understand. So, remember, demonstrate each tense with short examples, clear actions, and questions that guide students to see how time is shown in grammar. Dear teachers, when working on sentence structure in senior classes, focus on clarity, variety, and accuracy. Begin by modeling sentence types. A simple sentence could be, the sun is shining. A compound sentence might be, the sun is shining, and the children are playing. A complex sentence could be, the children are playing because the sun is shining. By showing these step by step, students see how sentences grow in complexity. Next, highlight transitional words that glue ideas together. Stress words like however, therefore, because, although. Ask students to combine short thoughts using these connectors to improve flow. Then, practice direct and indirect speech with real dialogue. For example, she said, I am ready, becomes she said that she was ready. This helps them shift between different reporting styles. Finally, provide students with an unedited text, missing punctuation, capitalization, or grammar. Challenge them to edit it, applying the rules they have learned. Dear teachers, today's takeaway is about writing for understanding. Stress, writing for understanding. First, when teaching paragraph writing, model the process step by step. Stress slowly, start with brainstorming ideas, then organize them into a clear order, move to a draft, and finally revise. For example, if the topic is my favorite hobby, let students brainstorm hobbies, choose one, organize points like why they enjoy it and how they practice it, then write a draft, and polish it after feedback. Second, for dialogue writing, encourage students to add more than just spoken words. Stress, more than just spoken words, ask them to use brackets for narration or background. For instance, slowly, Ali, I am so tired today. He drops his bag on the chair. This way, the narration shows action while the dialogue gives voice. Also remind students to keep the tone realistic, and choose vocabulary that matches the relationship between speakers. For example, two close friends might say, hey buddy, let's go. While a student speaking to a teacher might say, good morning, sir, may I ask a question? So remember, guide your students step by step in paragraph writing, and enrich their dialogues with narration, tone, and realistic vocabulary. That's how writing becomes meaningful, and connected to real communication. By using modeling, transitions, dialogue practice, and editing, teachers guide students from basic sentence awareness to confident and polished writing. Start with narratives and essays. Show students how paragraphs link an introduction, an event, and a reflection. For example, a short essay could begin with, last Friday was special, move to what happened, and end with what they learned. Next, introduce play scripts. Model how stage directions and dialogue are written. For example, Ali enters nervously followed by Ali, I am not ready yet. This helps students understand format and voice. Move on to descriptive writing. Guide them from general to specific with vivid details. Instead of, the garden was nice, encourage, the garden was filled with bright red roses, tall green trees, and the sound of chirping birds. Also practice paraphrasing and summary using short texts or poems. Teach students to keep the meaning but use fewer words. Encourage free writing. Remind them that fluency matters more than perfection. Students should write without fear of mistakes. Finally, always teach editing. Show both the wrong and the corrected version. For example, he go to school yesterday becomes, he went to school yesterday. By combining these approaches, we help students write with clarity, purpose, and confidence. First, progress grows with patience and consistency. Stress just like planting a seed, we don't see results overnight, but with daily care, growth becomes visible. Encourage your students with the same patience. Second, start with small, achievable milestones. For example, instead of saying, we will master essay writing in 1 week, break it into steps, brainstorming on day 1, drafting on day 2, revising on day 3. Small goals keep motivation alive. Third, remember, each day brings us closer to our goal. Stress slowly, remind yourself and your students that learning is a journey, and even small progress counts. Fourth, a strong follow-up plan ensures growth. After teaching a skill, check back with short quizzes, peer reviews, or reflective writing. This shows students that learning continues beyond one lesson. Finally, try one demo lesson per week. Stress this not only builds your confidence, but also inspires your peers when they see practical strategies in action. So, remember, patience, small steps, daily progress, follow-up, and demo lessons, together these steps make teaching stronger, more effective, and inspiring.